I was a devout Muslim. Then I died. And in the realm beyond death, I met Jesus. This is the story I never thought I'd tell. But I have to. My name is Yusuf. I was born in Kano, Nigeria, the eldest of 5 children in a devout Sunni Muslim household. My father was a Quranic teacher. My earliest memories are filled with the melodic cadence of Arabic recitations echoing through our courtyard, the call to prayer rising before dawn, and the warm rhythm of family prayers side by side on our prayer mats. Islam wasn't just religion in our house, it was our way of life. It governed how we ate, how we dressed, how we spoke, how we even thought. The Quran was our compass, and the Prophet Muhammad was the best example of man we were taught to emulate. From age 6, I was enrolled in madrasa and learned to read and recite the Quran fluently. I memorized large portions by the time I turned 12. I fasted through Ramadan even when I was young, and I had dreams of one day becoming a respected Islamic scholar, maybe even traveling to Al-Azhar in Egypt. We were taught that Christians worship 3 gods, that their scriptures were corrupted, and that calling Jesus the Son of God was blasphemy. As a boy, I felt pity for them, and sometimes anger. But mostly, I felt superior. After all, we had the final revelation. Still, something always gnawed at the edges of my certainty. It started as small questions. During a lesson on the 99 names of Allah, I remember asking my teacher why, if God was all compassionate and all merciful, he felt so distant. Why did I feel closer to him in fear than in love? The teacher's smile faded. He told me not to question divine wisdom. Love for God, he said, comes after obedience. Obedience comes through fear. I tried to be content with that. But I wasn't. In my teenage years, I began to struggle internally. I still prayed, still fasted, still led some of the prayers in our neighborhood. But I felt hollow. I feared dying every single day. Not because I was unsure of my religion, but because I was unsure of myself. I wasn't holy enough. Not disciplined enough. Not clean enough inside. And Islam, as I practiced it, offered no guarantee, only hope that my good deeds would somehow outweigh the bad on the scales of judgment. At age 25, I moved to Abuja to pursue studies in political science. There, I encountered Christians more regularly, classmates who were kind, joyful, often praying and singing openly. I didn't understand their boldness. One, they worried they'd be punished for their arrogance. They spoke of assurance, of relationship with God, of love. Real love. It was confusing. And yet, oddly beautiful. Still, I hardened my heart. I focused on my career, tried to outstudy the doubt. By the time I turned 32, I was working as a customs officer. I was married to a woman named Khadija. We had 2 children. From the outside, I was a respected man of faith and stature. Inside, I was quietly unraveling. I developed high blood pressure from the stress. I barely slept. I was consumed by the fear that I had offended God in some hidden way and would burn in hell for it. Every time I made a mistake, even a small one, I would punish myself with shame and endless prayers. Eventually, I stopped praying at all. I stopped because I no longer believed Allah had me. That year, in the middle of July, I collapsed in my office. It was sudden. One moment I was speaking to a colleague, and the next, I felt my chest tighten like iron clamps were being screwed into my lungs. I gasped for breath. My knees buckled. I heard shouting, felt hands grabbing me, then everything went black. But the story didn't end there. It began. I awoke, not in a hospital, not surrounded by doctors, but in utter silence. The world around me was gray. Muted. I was standing upright, but my body felt weightless. There was no pain. No noise. No time. And yet, I was more aware than I'd ever been. I looked around. I wasn't in my office anymore. I was in what felt like a vast plain, shrouded in fog. There were no buildings. No people. Just stillness. I tried to walk, but every direction felt the same. And then I noticed something, a ship in the distance. A flicker of light. Small at first. Then growing. I moved toward it, unsure if I was walking or floating. As I approached, a sudden, terrifying awareness came over me. I was dead. The moment I realized I was dead, panic surged through me. But there was no air to scream into. No voice. Just thought, loud, raw, and fast. What's happening? Where am I? Am I in Barzakh? Barzakh, the barrier between life and death. I had read about it in hadiths. It was said to be a waiting place where souls would remain until the day of judgment. Some described it as a grave of darkness. Others, as a garden of peace. But this place was neither. It felt hollow. Vast. Silent in a way that went beyond sound. I looked down, nobody. No limbs. And yet, I was not dreaming and not hallucinating. I was real. Then, suddenly, I felt movement. Not my own, something was coming toward me. A wind, maybe. No, a presence. And then I saw it. A light. It started small, like a candle flame far away. But it grew with each moment, expanding and approaching until the very fabric of this void trembled in its radiance. It wasn't just light. It was alive. It pulsed with warmth, but also with authority. I instinctively lowered my gaze, overcome with something I had never felt before. Not fear. Not awe. It was holiness. I dropped to my knees, or what felt like knees. I wanted to hide, to vanish. Because in the presence of that light, I felt every inch of my soul laid bare. All the pride. The hidden sin. The secret judgments. The spiritual arrogance. The light drew closer. I dared not look up. Then I heard the voice. Not with ears, but inside me. Yusuf. Just my name. But when he spoke it, it carried history. It was as if he was saying, I know you. I have always known you. I wept. I don't know why, except that I had never, in all my life, felt so utterly seen. I slowly raised my gaze. And I saw him. A man, clothed in light, with a face both familiar and unfamiliar. His eyes held oceans. His hands bore marks, not wounds, but signatures. I couldn't explain how I knew, but I did. Jesus. The Isa I had dismissed as merely a prophet. The man Christians call the Son of God. He stood before me. And he did not look disappointed. He looked like love itself. Why am I here? I managed to think. He smiled, and again, I heard his voice inside me, gentle and firm. Because you have searched. Because your prayers, though unanswered in the way you expected, were never ignored. Because I have chosen you to see what many do not. He stepped closer. You knew about God. But you did not know him. I was trembling. But I am Muslim. I believed in Allah. I obeyed. I studied. Yes, he said, and I have honored your sincerity. But salvation does not come through striving. It comes through me. I am the door. Then, as if time shifted, he extended his hand and touched my chest. Suddenly, I saw a series of visions, faster than thought. Scenes from my life. The time I mocked a Christian friend who told me she prayed to God like a father. The moment I gave a piece of bread to a homeless child and felt a warmth I couldn't explain. The hours I spent weeping in secret, begging Allah to show himself to me in truth. I saw my wife, Khadija, praying for my healing. I saw my children, their faces, their innocence, the weight they would carry if I never returned. Then, I saw him, Jesus, on a cross. But not like in paintings. And as I stared, I felt it, the weight of sin being taken. Not just mine. Ours. And then he said, this I did for you. I collapsed. There was no way to rationalize this. No doctrinal defense. No theological backpedaling. All I knew was that everything I thought I knew was being rewritten. I tried to speak. I don't deserve this. No one does, he replied. That is why it is called grace. I was silent. Tears streamed down a face I no longer had. Then he knelt down, face to face with me. Yusuf, I did not come to destroy what you were taught. I came to fulfill what your heart longed for. I am the way, the truth, the life. And then, the question. Do you want to return? Part of me ached to stay. This was peace unlike any I had ever known. But then, I saw my children again. I saw my wife. I saw people, millions, living in fear, in darkness, in confusion. People who had never heard this voice. If I go back, I said, they won't believe me. Some won't, he answered. But those who seek truth will recognize my voice in yours. And then he touched my forehead. Everything exploded into light. I awoke to chaos. Monitors beeping, a bright hospital room, harsh fluorescent lights overhead. It was chaos. My throat was raw. My body ached in every joint. A nurse leaned over me, gasping and calling for the doctor. I saw two men in white coats rush in. One began shouting orders. The other adjusted machines near my chest. I couldn't speak. But I was awake. More awake than I had ever been. They told me later that I had been clinically dead for 6 minutes. My heart had stopped. Flatlined. The doctors were preparing to declare death when, suddenly, my pulse returned. No one had a medical explanation. But I had one. And I was terrified to say it. My wife, Khadija, came the next morning. Her eyes were red, hijab slightly crooked. She clutched the hand of our eldest son as she entered the room, and when she saw me conscious, she collapsed to her knees and cried. I wanted to hold her. To tell her how much I loved her. But I didn't know how to tell her what I had seen. The first few days, I said nothing. I let the doctors run tests. I thanked the nurses. I smiled at my family and told them I was okay. But I wasn't okay. Because every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. Every time I listened to the Qur'an on my hospital room's old radio, I felt torn between the fate of my past and the presence I had touched in the light. On the 6th day, I asked for a Bible. It was a quiet request, spoken only to a Christian nurse who had treated me with great kindness. She blinked at me and said, "A Bible." I nodded. "Please." In secret. She nodded without a word and returned that evening with a small pocket-sized New Testament. That night, I read the Gospel of John for the first time. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. I wept into my pillow. Because that was the light I had seen. The next few weeks were a quiet war. Every word in that little Bible drew me closer. But every memory of my upbringing screamed in protest. What would my father say? What would my uncles think? How could I ever explain this to my wife? But I could not unsee him. The Jesus I had met was not a doctrine. He was a person. He had known me, spoken to me, healed me. And I could not betray that truth. I was discharged from the hospital a month later. The day I left, I tucked the little Bible deep inside my bag, wrapped in the pages of an old newspaper. I knew what it meant to be caught with it. Even in Abuja, more tolerant than the North, the idea of a respected Muslim man reading the Bible could spark outrage. When I returned home, Khadija wept again. The children hugged me tightly, unaware that their father had returned different. I waited 6 weeks. Then I told her. We were alone after the children had gone to bed. I told her about the collapse. The light. The man. The voice. His words. The cross. The return. I left nothing out. She listened in silence, lips parted, tears falling slowly down her face. When I finished, I waited. There was a long, terrible silence. Then she whispered, "You saw him." I nodded. "And you believe? He is more than a prophet." "I do." Her shoulders shook. "I don't know what to do with this," she said. "Everything we've believed, everything we taught our children." "I know," I said gently. "I don't expect you to believe because of me. But I can't deny what I saw." Then she said something that surprised me. "I've had dreams of a man in white. Before you collapsed, I thought it was Shaitan. But now, maybe not." In the weeks that followed, we prayed, not in Arabic, not in ritual, but with sincerity. We asked for truth, for guidance, for peace. And Jesus came again, not visibly, but in the Word. We read the Gospels together at night. She began to cry when Jesus forgave the adulterous woman. I wept when I read his words from the cross. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." That was the love I had longed for. Not fear-driven obedience. Not conditional mercy. But grace. We decided to follow him together. Quietly at first. Then with more boldness, we taught our children stories about Jesus from both the Qur'an and the Bible. We showed them how much he loved the poor, the sick, the forgotten. We began to live our lives not in secret fear, but in open grace. We found an underground fellowship with other former Muslims who had met him in visions, dreams, and near-death experiences. Some had been beaten, disowned, threatened. But all of them glowed with the same fire I had felt in that valley of light. One day, I spoke at that gathering. I shared my story, from the mosque to the hospital, from the tunnel to the man of light. And afterward, a man came to me with tears in his eyes. "You just described my dream." I saw the same man. But I thought I was going mad. I put my hand on his shoulder and said, "You're not mad, brother. You've been called." We lost many friends. I was removed from my position in the civil service quietly, for health reasons. My father stopped speaking to me. But my soul was no longer tormented. I didn't fear death, because I had already died. And I knew who would meet me on the other side. I used to think that the hardest thing in life was death. Now I know it's being alive with the truth, and having to carry it into a world that doesn't want to hear it. After my public testimony at the underground gathering, my name began to circulate quietly within the hidden community of Muslim background believers. I received visits, letters, calls, mostly from people who had also encountered Jesus in dreams or near-death experiences but were afraid to speak. Some had kept it a secret for decades. A few had been imprisoned or beaten when they confessed faith openly. And yet, none of them regretted it. Because once you've seen the light, no shadow can satisfy you again. One evening, a young man named Bilal came to visit me. He was 19. Born into a strict Salafi household. He had tried to take his own life after being abused by a relative, and was declared clinically dead for 4 minutes. During that time, he saw Jesus. Not Isa the prophet, but Jesus, radiant, wounded, weeping with him, holding him, whispering, "You are not forgotten." His voice trembled as he told me, "I haven't told my parents. I just needed to know I'm not crazy." I took his hand. "You're not crazy, Bilal. You're called." The word called became a firebrand in my heart. I knew I couldn't stay hidden forever. Not when people like Bilal needed someone to stand up first. So I began to speak, cautiously, but publicly. I started a blog under a pseudonym, The Crescent in the Cross. I shared my testimony in writing. I answered emails from seekers. I held quiet Bible studies for a few friends who were curious but afraid of being seen in a church. Some laughed. Some threatened. But some listened. One day, I received a handwritten letter. It was from my younger sister, Amina. She was living in Kano, still fully observant, and had been shocked and ashamed when news of my conversion first reached her. But in her letter, she confessed something I never expected. For the past 2 years, I've been having dreams of a man in glowing white who speaks peace to me, though I do not know his name. I thought it was a jinn. But now, I think I understand. She ended the letter with a question. "Is it too late for me?" I cried for hours. Then I wrote back, "Sister, he has already written your name in his hand. It's never too late." The danger, of course, was always growing. My identity was eventually linked to the blog. I began receiving death threats. Once, our house was sprayed with graffiti, "Martyred, apostate." Khadija was terrified. The children were confused. We moved cities, from Abuja to Jos, where Christian communities were more established. I took a job with a faith-based NGO doing aid work, which allowed me to serve without drawing too much attention. But I never stopped speaking. At a conference in Nairobi, I shared my story with a room full of former Muslims and Christian missionaries. At the end, a woman from Syria approached me. She didn't speak much English, but she showed me her phone, a photo of a white-robed man standing in golden light. Tears in her eyes, she pointed at the image and said, "He came to me too." The more I testified, the more I saw that this wasn't just about me. God was calling people across the world, from every background, culture, and religion, to see Jesus not just as a prophet or teacher, but as the living bridge between man and God. I was invited to speak in small churches, in refugee camps, even in coffee shops where people gathered to hear a man who saw the light. I told them everything, not to glorify myself, but to shatter the silence, to tell Muslims that Jesus wasn't just the savior of the West. He was the king of the universe. And he was coming again and again to reach those no one thought reachable. My father never forgave me. He died 2 years after my return. We hadn't spoken. At his funeral, I wept. Not only for the years we lost, but for the walls that stood between us, built from generations of fear. But I also prayed that in his final moments, he had cried out, and been met by the same mercy that rescued me. Because I have seen it now. Jesus never gives up. Today, I live quietly in a community of mixed believers, some ex-Muslims, some lifelong Christians. We meet in homes. We pray in whispers. We worship in joy. My children are growing in faith. My wife now helps young women like herself navigate the cost of following Christ. And I write, teach, and I share his message. Some days, I still feel the weight of exile. But I remember his words in the valley of light. Those who seek truth will recognize my voice in yours. If you're reading this, and you are Muslim, please know, I honor your sincerity. I honor your devotion. But I also invite you to ask, what if he is more than we were taught? What if the fear you feel isn't from God? What if Jesus really is the way to the one you've been longing to know? He came to me when I was dead. He called my name. He showed me the cross. And he brought me back. Not to debate. Not to argue. But to love, testify, and to shine.